January 15th. He'd built it perfectly. Workout after coffee, journal after workout, 20 minutes of reading after journaling, a complete morning architecture, stacked, tested, running clean for 28 days. By February 12th, all of it was gone. Not because he lost motivation, not because the habits were too hard, not because he stopped caring about the person he was trying to become. His coffee machine broke. He grabbed coffee at the office instead. Different location, different routine, different morning context. And without that morning coffee ritual as his anchor, the entire chain never fired. The workout, the journal, the reading, gone. He wasn't the problem. The system he built looked solid and wasn't. And here's what nobody tells you about habit stacking. The method isn't wrong. The assumption underneath it is. The habit stacking model works like this. You already have behaviors that fire reliably. Use those as triggers. Link the new habit to something you already do. After coffee, meditate. After the gym, journal. You're borrowing momentum from routines that are already running. That logic sounds right. And it is right, up to a point. B.J. Fogg, writing in 2019, mapped exactly how habitual behavior actually fires. His model, behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt, shows that behavior only executes when all three elements converge at the same moment. But the prompt has to fire first. In habit stacking, your anchor is the prompt. The morning coffee ritual is the prompt. The workout is the behavior. And here is the part the habit stacking conversation keeps skipping. If the prompt doesn't fire, neither does the behavior. Not because of low motivation, not because of reduced ability. The chain sits dormant, waiting for a trigger that never comes. It's not that habit stacking is wrong. It's that it assumes you already have a reliable prompt, and most of us don't. So if the anchor isn't the problem, and willpower isn't the problem, what actually determines whether a habit sticks or disappears? There are three ways people try to build habits. Most people live in the second one and don't know there's a third. And once you see the difference, you'll understand not just why your habit stacks collapsed, but why every approach that ever worked long-term succeeded for the same reason. Let's start with what most people get told first. The promise of habit stacking is elegant. You already have behaviors that fire reliably. Use those as triggers. Link new behaviors to existing ones. You're not relying on willpower. You're borrowing momentum from what's already working. Millions of people have tried some version of this, and it works, for a while. The logic is genuinely sound. Anchoring new behaviors to existing contexts is how habits form. And for some people, whose anchor routines are genuinely stable, consistent environment, no major disruption, it works exactly as promised. The anchor fires every time. The chain holds. But most people don't have that. And habit stacking never tells you that it only works if you already have something rare. Catherine Milkman is a behavioral scientist at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. In her 2021 book, How to Change, she spent years studying exactly why behavior change succeeds and fails, and the finding that keeps surfacing is one the habit stacking conversation keeps skipping. Sustainable behavior change doesn't come from making behaviors easier to chain. It comes from changing the psychological relationship between you and the behavior. In other words, the problem with habit stacking isn't the chain itself. It's what the chain leaves completely unchanged, who you believe you are. The behavior sits outside your identity, and your brain will always find ways to prioritize identity over mechanics. So if behavioral chains can collapse, and pure willpower runs out, what's the architecture underneath the habits that actually stay? There are three levels, and almost everyone starts at the wrong one. There are three levels of how people try to build habits. Not three methods, three architectures. Each one is built on a different assumption about what makes behavior stick. Each assumption breaks in a predictable, specific way. Most people move through these levels without realizing they're moving, often spending years at the wrong layer, wondering why the right tools keep producing the same result. The goal isn't to feel bad about where you've been. It's to see clearly where you're going. Level 1 is where most people start, pure willpower. You decide you're going to exercise, journal, meditate, and you try to do it through force of will. No system, no anchor. Just deciding hard enough. This works for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then motivation dips, life disrupts, and the behavior stops. Not because you're weak, because willpower is a daily supply, and supplies run out every time. Level 1 fails not because of character. It fails because it builds behavior on the least reliable foundation available: how you feel on any given day. Most people discover this quickly and move to level 2, thinking they've found the upgrade. But here's what Wendy Wood found back in 2019 about how habits actually work in the brain. Habitual behaviors aren't stored as action sequences. They're stored as context-response pairings. Your brain doesn't remember, do the workout. It remembers, when this context appears, do the workout. Remove the context, and the behavior has no trigger, which is exactly what level 2 depends on. So most people move to level 2. They discover habit stacking, build their chain, coffee then workout, workout then journal. And for a while, it works. Here's what level 2 feels like. You've solved it. The system is running. You're not relying on willpower anymore. You're relying on structure. And structure feels durable. But Wendy Wood's research tells us exactly why the structure isn't as durable as it feels. And Wood's finding explains the mechanism precisely. That context-response storage means the anchor isn't a behavior trigger in isolation. It's a context cue. And most anchor routines aren't truly automatic. They fire in a specific context. Change the context, and the anchor breaks. The coffee machine breaks. The morning routine shifts. A work trip disrupts the schedule for 4 days. And the entire stack, the workout, the journal, the reading, collapses. Not in slow decline, all at once. Because level 2 is a chain, and chains fail at the weakest link. This isn't a willpower failure, it's a structural failure. The flaw was always in the architecture, not in you. But here's the question that changes everything. What if the goal isn't to chain a habit to something that already exists, but to become the kind of person for whom that behavior is just what they do? Not a task, not a chain, just behavior that confirms who they are. This is level 3, and it operates on a completely different principle. It doesn't build habits by chaining behaviors. It builds habits by shifting the identity that generates behavior. A person who identifies as a runner doesn't ask whether they feel like running. Running is what runners do. Each run confirms the identity. The confirmed identity makes the next run require less friction. Not because they built better willpower, but because the behavior is now self-maintaining. New research published in 2025 tracked exactly how this works. Alfrey, Condie and Rebar, researchers in the psychology of behavior change, followed participants across multiple habit domains over 12 weeks and found something specific. When behavior aligns with self-concept, the identity-behavior link becomes mutually reinforcing. The behavior confirms the identity. The strengthened identity lowers the friction of the next behavior, and the cycle compounds. While this research was conducted with specific behavioral domains, the mechanism maps directly to the habits we build in everyday life. Because identity operates the same way, regardless of which behavior confirms it. Behavior doesn't build identity. Identity builds behavior. Level 2 has it backwards. Think about a habit you've tried to build 3 or more times without it sticking. Ask one question. Was it something you wanted to do? Or something you genuinely believed you were the kind of person who does? The first is a level 2 answer. The second is a level 3 answer. And that gap, not the method, not the motivation, not the schedule, is the entire mechanism. These aren't personality failures. They're architectural defaults. Level 1 and Level 2 aren't character flaws. They're where almost everyone starts, because nobody teaches you Level 3. You found out the method's fine print the hard way. Most people do. James Clear understood this when he wrote about identity-based habits. The question, "Who do I want to be?" is not a motivational poster. It's a functional instruction to the brain. Your self-concept is the most powerful behavior filter you have, more powerful than any external system, trigger, or accountability mechanism you could put in place. Level 2 treats habits as behaviors to be chained. Level 3 treats habits as votes, each one confirming or contradicting who you believe you are. And when enough votes accumulate, the identity feels real. And once the identity feels real, the behavior becomes something you protect, not something you force. You don't need to have the identity fully formed before you start. You just need to start voting for it. If this kind of research-backed reframe is what you're looking for, not just psychology for the sake of it, but frameworks that change how you actually see your own patterns, that's what this channel is. Subscribing is how you don't miss the next one. Now that you can see the 3 levels, Level 1 burning through willpower, Level 2 depending on an anchor that breaks, the question isn't which one you've been stuck in. It's how you actually get to Level 3. Every habit that collapsed, the January streaks, the stacks that fell apart after one disrupted morning, those weren't failures of character. They were predictable outcomes of an architecture built on the wrong foundation. You were doing what the method told you. The method just skipped the most important step. Level 3 doesn't ask you to add more structure. It asks you to answer one question first. The identity shift protocol. 3 steps. Not about building a better chain, about building a different foundation. Step 1. Write this sentence before you name any behavior. I am someone who, identity. Not, I want to. Not, I'm trying to. I am. If you want to train more consistently, the sentence is, I am someone who trains regularly. Step 2. Ask what a genuine holder of that identity naturally does. A runner runs. A reader reads. You're not selecting behaviors to add to your schedule. You're discovering what the identity already generates. Let the behavior follow from the identity. Step 3. Start with the smallest possible vote. Not the full 45-minute workout. 5 minutes that confirm who you are. The goal isn't a streak. It's accumulating enough votes that the identity feels real and worth protecting. Once it feels real, the behavior becomes maintenance, not effort. One thing to watch for: the first missed day. The Level 2 response kicks in immediately. The chain broke. The system failed. But in Level 3, a missed day is a missed vote. The identity doesn't evaporate. You vote again tomorrow. Level 2 is binary. The chain is intact or it isn't. Level 3 is cumulative. The vote count rebuilds. The response to a missed day isn't to rebuild the chain. It's to cast the next vote. Which brings us to the only question that matters. Not which level you've been operating at, but which one you choose to start from now. 3 levels. Level 1. Willpower. Burns out because it runs on daily supply. Level 2. The stack. Collapses because anchors break. Level 3. Identity. Compounds because behavior confirms self-concept, and self-concept protects behavior. Habit stacking didn't fail because you lacked discipline. It failed because it assumed you had a stable anchor, and never told you that was a requirement you had to meet first. You came in thinking about a guy whose coffee machine broke. But that story isn't about coffee. It's about what every collapsed habit stack actually was. A system that looked durable from the outside, built on an assumption that was never checked. The method isn't wrong. The layer is wrong. Build at the wrong layer, and every habit collapses the moment context shifts. Build at the right one, and the behavior starts to protect itself. Every habit you built and lost, that's not a record of weakness. That's evidence that you kept trying to solve a structural problem with motivational tools. Now you know the structural solution. Next time you feel the pull to add another behavior to your stack, that's your Level 2 instinct running. The Level 3 question is different. Who is the kind of person who does this naturally, and have I been voting for that identity? That's the only question that builds something that lasts. Drop in the comments. What's one habit you've tried to build using willpower or habit stacking that eventually collapsed? And if you've successfully built a habit that now feels effortless, was there a specific moment when it shifted from something you were trying to do to just who you are? There's one more thing that works against level 3 that we haven't covered here. It's the reason some people can name the identity, start voting for it, and still find the behavior doesn't stick. It has to do with what your brain does when it isn't executing the habit. We covered it in full in this one.